Wake up, we're here. Why are you shaking? Are you okay? Wake up. Stand up. And there you go. You were dreaming. What's your name? So hello everybody and welcome to the third episode of my Elder Scrolls Online Morrowind Talkthrough, where we venture across Vvardenfell and we nostalgiagasm all over it because it's wonderful. Now, ever since I found out that they were remaking Vvardenfell for Elder Scrolls Online, I wanted to do one thing, and that one thing was to go down the same path that I would always take when I made a new character in Morrowind. And that's how we're gonna start off today's episode. Now, the route I would always take after I made a couple of characters would always start off in Seydanin, obviously. But from there, instead of taking a Silt Strider to Balmora, I would follow the road that goes northwest until I hit a hill. There, I would go off the road to the left to go through an ancestral tomb, and I would then return to the road and follow it until I hit a river where I would go left and go to a shipwreck. After I've looted the shipwreck, I would turn around and follow the river all the way to Balmora, where I would sell everything that I picked up, and I would then go to a Dwemer ruin. This was definitely not the best way to start off a character, but once again, I played the original Morrowind before I had access to the internet, so I kinda had to figure out how to best start off a new character on my own. Now, in the original Morrowind, you would choose your name at the start in the ship we were just in, then you would choose your race on this bridge, and you would go into the census office where you could either pick a pre-existing class, you could answer some questions that would determine your class, or you would just build your own class because that was way more fun. There are some really good guides nowadays on how to start off a character in Morrowind and how to get some decent money right off the bat. For example, in the census office, there is a very expensive plate on a shelf which you can pick up and throw on the ground before they run up to you and tell you that you can't do that. But since it's the start of the game, you don't really get any bounty, so you can then pick up the plate again and you can sell it later on. Because when you pick up the plate and immediately throw it on the ground, it will change the owner, so it's no longer considered stealing when you pick it up later on. Now, I wouldn't usually just head off to the sunset right away. I would first finish the Fargot questline, where you first encounter Fargot, which is a wood elf, you give him his ring, and then everyone's like, well, you know, he's hiding something, I don't know what it is, maybe you should check it out. So you go to the lighthouse, you wait there until midnight, at which point you will see him creeping around the log, so you go there and you loot the log, and at that point you can either keep everything, which was, you know, it was a nice bit of starting cash, but it was far more beneficial to actually turn everything in, because that would make it so that the merchant in the town would like you far more, so you could buy everything from him much cheaper. Now, once I kill this troll, we will come across an area where, in the original Morrowind, you would come across something very strange. You would see a wood elf wizard fall from the sky and die from fall damage right before your very eyes. Now, you could actually save him with a slow fall spell if you avoided this until you got a slow fall spell and you cast it on him. But, you know, him dying wasn't the worst thing ever, because he would usually drop a silver sword that was enchanted with spark, which was very good, and he would drop a robe and a golden hat. The reason why he died is because he crafted a couple of scrolls of Icarian flight, which would fortify your acrobatics by 1000 points, but only for 7 seconds. So if you used it, you could jump across the entire continent, but unfortunately the scroll ran out before you landed, so you would die from fall damage. And here is the ancestral tomb I was talking about, which is unfortunately blocked off, so we can't go in there. And this is the first dungeon I would always do, because at the end there was an urn that had a ring in it. And I think the ring fortified intelligence and willpower by 10 points each, which was a really good ring to start with. But anyway, let's go back to the road and go around the delve, which was actually a cave in the original game as well. But I would never go in there early on because I remember it being pretty tough. Now, right around here is where I got really confused and I was starting to get thrown off by how close together everything felt. And I think it just felt closer together. I don't think this version of Vvardenfell is much smaller than the Vvardenfell we had in Morrowind. It's just that, number one, we have much greater draw distance, so you're able to see things before, you know, you're rubbing your nose on them. And number two, we move much faster. I would say that running in Morrowind, which would deplete your fatigue, which is what stamina used to be called, was about as fast as just walking in ESO, so you can get everywhere much quicker nowadays. I mean, running in ESO feels about as fast as running around with the boots of blinding speed in Morrowind. Now, over here I've encountered a couple of Alites, I don't know how to pronounce these. I don't think I've heard an NPC in the game pronounce them yet, so I can only go by what I used to pronounce them, which was Alit. And here is where I would jump down to the river and follow it until I came across a shipwreck that had a chest in it that had, I don't know if it was 2 or 3 pearls, which was great to start off with because they sold for a decent amount. But all that I found here was just a small boat, so I turned around and headed over to Balmora. And I would constantly look around because seeing the swamp with greater draw distance is just really cool. I also came across a chest that had one of the War Maiden's items in it. It was a restoration staff. After a little bit, once again, much sooner than I expected, I came across Balmora and I was like, is it really that close to Seydanin? But I guess it is if you can move around much faster. Now, once in Balmora, I got really confused because I couldn't for the life of me find the right path which would lead me to this bridge, which would take me to the Dwemer Ruin. It took me about 20 minutes before I realized that the path is just not there, so I'm gonna have to go through the crag and then somehow make it up to the Dwemer Ruin. And when I finally got close to the bridge, I went, oh no, you can't get on top of it because it just ended in a pile of rocks, so the end of the bridge where you would usually get on was not accessible. However, I did see this path earlier, which looked like it was going to the Dwemer Ruin, so I was like, well, maybe you just enter it via a different door and you explore a different part of the ruin. I also saw a Redoran soldier and a Telvanni mate smacking the crap out of each other right next to the bridge. So I immediately went, alright, let's get on top of this mushroom and get some popcorn because this gonna be good, but I got stuck instead. But anyway, I followed the path that I saw earlier, which led me to this right here. And at first I got really excited because I saw a gate, but as soon as I came up to the gate, I realized that nope, I'm just not getting into that Dwemer Ruin, unfortunately. But anyway, I went back down the crag and went to the Daedric ruin that was on the other side of it. And this is actually why I would originally pick up the silver sword. Because there were quite a few enemies in Morrowind that you just straight up could not hit if you didn't have either a silver weapon or an enchanted weapon. So having an enchanted silver weapon was like the best case scenario here. But anyway, after killing a bunch of dudes, which were just some normal bandits, there were no Daedra around in this Daedric ruin, I found the entrance, and as I came close to the entrance, I saw rubble and immediately went, bollocks. It was inaccessible once again. So I was like, well, what am I gonna do now? I know, let's go to Caldera. Where is Caldera? Well, turns out Caldera is not built yet because it's an imperial settlement that was built later on. This is why you will not see any imperial forts around either. Caldera in this timeline is simply not built yet. But at least I found a world boss called Nildhogg the Unbroken, so we killed it with a bunch of brave adventurers and he dropped some goodies for us. He dropped the War Maiden's Jerkin, which I already got a staff for at the beginning of this episode. And I think, the keyword being think, that this is the location where Caldera would eventually be built, because Caldera was built in something we only know as the Caldera Crater, and this is the closest thing to a crater that I've seen around here. Now, as I was fuffing around, I've noticed that I'm getting close to one of the quests, which was in Ald'ruhn, so I decided to go there because I really wanted to see how Ald'ruhn has changed over the years. I also ran into this fella right outside of Ald'ruhn, and he was just trying to investigate something about his family's ancestral tomb, but the Ashlanders from Ald'ruhn weren't really happy about him asking too many questions, so he asked me if I could help. Now, it turns out that Ald'ruhn has actually changed quite a bit over the years, because here it's just a bunch of tents around Scar. And in Morrowind, it has a wall and proper buildings. Now, as I was running through the tents, I came across this sleeping guar, and I was like, oh, it's so cute. And then Spidey came along and was like, oh, look at that, it's so cute. So we stared at it a little bit, and we left it to sleep because it was just too cute to wake up. Now, the centerpiece of Ald'ruhn is quite the thing indeed. It is a ginormous hollowed shell of an emperor crab called Scar. And this is what Ald'ruhn was built around, because many years ago they've slain the Emperor Crab and then decided to build a settlement around it because the crab would provide them with loads of chitin and crab meat. So it was a perfect spot for a settlement. Now, the fella outside of Ald'ruhn told me I should talk to the Farseer, who's trying to become a wise woman, which is why she has a blindfold. And I'm not gonna go into Ashlanders too much because it would take up far too much time. And if you want to, you can ask the Farseer about Ashlanders yourself. Now, in order to get some information from her, I was being a little bit cheeky and I was just like, yeah, I just want to honor the ancestors, so what do you need me to do? And she was like, well, okay, you need the bones of a fallen Gua, you need an ashen fern, you need a weapon of an exiled Ashlander, and you need a jeweled cuttle from a Quama queen. And as soon as she listed all the things I'm gonna need to finish the quest, I went, this doesn't sound very MMO-y. These things are gonna be all over the place. And while they're not, they're, in the general vicinity of Ald'ruhn, I don't think this quest would stand out if it was in Morrowind. You would not get the objective marker, so you would run across the entire Vvardenfell before you figured out where you need to get them. But it felt like a single-player quest while I was doing it. And I'm not sure about this, but I think there was a fairly similar quest in Ald'ruhn that you could do in Morrowind as well. I'm really not sure though, because most of the time I would just go into Ald'ruhn, I would rob all the houses, and then I would get out. And while I was picking up all the stuff I needed to honor the ancestors, I came across a Ald'ruhn residence, and the game told me I was trespassing, which they feature that I like an awful lot. You can go somewhere where you're not supposed to, it's just like, look, you're trespassing, you can go there, but if someone catches you, you're kind of boned. There's also a bunch of Daedric ruins on the west coast of Vvardenfell, especially as you get closer to Seydanin, and I also remember 2 Dwemer towers that were partially buried in the ground, and I found them. And they also held a wee bit of a surprise for me, because when I upgraded to the Morrowind version of Elder Scrolls Online, I got 3 treasure maps for Vvardenfell, and this was one of the locations, so I got a treasure as well. But anyway, I found the Ashen Ferns right outside of the Ald'ruhn settlement, which as you can see over here are a rare fern that's native to the coast of Vvardenfell. I've explored a Quama cave to get the jeweled cuttle from the queen, and this was just a Quama cave. It wasn't even a delve, it was just an area you go to and explore to get a quest item, which I thought was really neat. I also forgot to record me killing 1 exiled Ashlander and picking up the weapon, but that wasn't too exciting. I just ran up to a dude, hit him in the face a couple of times, and there it was, on the ground. And as I was going back to Ald'ruhn, I came across an ancestral tomb, which was a crafting location for the Daedric trickery set. It was just a small ancestral tomb that you would find all over Vvardenfell, even in Morrowind, and the set gives you bonus health, then bonus stamina, bonus magicka, and if you have 5 pieces, it will rotate a random major buff that will last for 10 seconds every 20 seconds, and you can either get major expedition, protection, mending, heroism, or vitality. And this is pretty interesting because I don't think you can get major heroism outside of the champion tree, and that only happens if you have that specific node and you fall below 20% health. But I'm not sure because they may have added some other way to get major heroism with the Morrowind update. And by the way, if you want to craft the Daedric trickery set, you want to go right here. It's right next to a wage shrine. But anyway, I've placed all the offerings, which made the Farseer very, very happy indeed, and I then asked her about the tomb, and she revealed some information and told me where the tomb was. And this is where it gets really, really spoilery, and on one hand, I don't want to spoil it, but on the other, it's actually really cool. This whole quest was really amazing, and the ending is really damn cool. So I'm gonna put up a little spoiler warning, so if you don't want to have this quest spoiled, you can leave, because this is the last thing I'm gonna talk about in this video. So as you explore the tomb and you pay respects to the ancestors, a ghost by the name of Draloth Heleran is going to talk to you. And this is awesome and spoilerific because this is the dude that killed Scar, the giant emperor crab that Ald'ruhn was built around. He even gives you the spear he used to slay Scar at the end of the questline. You can't keep it, unfortunately, because you're supposed to give it to the fella that you started this quest with, which is also a Heleran, so he should have it instead. And he also tells you to tell the young Heleran that, you give the spear to, that Ald'ruhn is his home and he should lay claim to the land. And then he tells you that the Heleran family was murdered by the Ashlanders, which is pretty crazy, and I think I've spoiled enough because there is some cool stuff happening after you do the quest as well, so you should definitely do this on your own. But good job, ZeniMax, this was really cool. I was having nerdgasms all over the place while I was playing this, and this is also when I'm gonna end the episode. So as always guys, I thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.